Hey, welcome to TXAPA Live. Jim Warren here with TXAPA. Chuck Fuller, our consultant extraordinaire, is with us today.
Thank you, Jim.
Today we're going to be talking about specification changes.
Oh, my goodness.
Have we read a bunch of specifications recently or what?
Oh, my goodness. We've been working on this special specification
Wow.
for over 2 years.
For over 2 years now.
Yeah.
Finally done.
Finally done. And they're
Ready to go.
Implemented in April.
And that's what we want to talk to you guys today about is April, which today's the 24th of March, so in 2 weeks, you guys are going to be bidding on work or starting looking at work. We got new specifications to talk about. So these are the ones we're going to talk about today. 340, there's an issue with 340.
Absolutely.
What happened to 340?
340 is no longer with us. So 340 is gone. April letting. So what we're going to do now is that we're going to go to 3076.
So we're just moving that over.
And we're going to follow the exemption section of 3076. So when you're doing detours,
right,
you're doing any kind of patching, any of that patching, that was referencing back to 340 will now go to 3076.
So what's different about what? Obviously our mixes change.
Our mixes change, and we're limited on the amount of recycled material.
Okay.
3076 limits us on the amount of recycled material, also limits us on the temperatures.
So
we got to pay attention, and also with the fact of the definition underneath 3076, which means that if you're going to be putting for surface.
Yeah.
If you're going to be putting a TOM on top of a patch,
right,
or you're going to be putting a seal coat on top of a patch, or a thin bonded wearing course on top of the patch, that patch material is going to be designated as surface mix.
Okay.
And so it lowers the amount of recycled material we can use, and we got to pay attention to temperatures, guys. It's an important aspect of everything.
Of all these spec changes, there's a huge emphasis on temperature, and all these ones we're going to talk about today. So that's what we want to make sure everybody is up to speed on. Every one of these, we've got to address that issue because temperature is important.
It's important.
What does temperature give us?
Temperature equals density, so there's no doubt.
And density equals performance. So if we don't have the right temperatures, or we're not placing in the right temperature range, it certainly can be challenging to get us the performance that we really need out of these mixes.
And so I think it's been really good that we've addressed temperature in all these specifications, and we're going to go through that, but I think it was important that we do this. I mean, I was with Ryan Barbarack on a project, it was 40 degrees, and they're laying a PFC F.
Ooh, that's tough.
And it was, the only reason they were doing it is because the specification allowed them to.
Okay.
So Ryan at that point right there said, man, we've got to address temperatures. We should not be doing this, and he's right. And I think it's going to make us more durable, longer lasting mixes in the long run.
That's the goal.
So we're definitely going to be talking about that.
So we'll be talking about temperature today.
So the other thing that everybody needs to be aware of is just because we're talking about special specification,
right?
What's going to happen here in the next year and a half, Jim?
Well, now we're going to have multiple specifications out there. Projects that have already been let under 340, 342, 346, all those old specs. Now we've got special specifications that are going to be in the mix.
That's right.
And then in 24, we're starting all over again. We're going to revert back to these.
Yes.
But those will be new and changed as well. So there's lots of changes coming. I think a huge opportunity for communication and just making sure that everybody's on the right page with this stuff all the time. Yeah. You move from job A to job B, let's make sure we got the right specs. Because I can see situations where there's going to be some confusion, and we just have to double down for the next couple of years and make sure that we're on what specification we're on for that particular project.
And this came up just the other day. I was talking to a contractor, and he said, hey, Chuck, I'm just running a regular old B-boy 64 minus 22. What's the maximum temperature? What's the maximum temperature? And I said, it's 350. And he said, okay. So, hang up, and 10 minutes later calls back, and he said, hey, you're wrong. It's 325. And I said, oh, you didn't tell me that you're running 3076.
Right.
I thought you were running a 341.
Right.
You said a regular B-boy, 64 minus 22. So we have
You're thinking old school.
I'm thinking old school.
Right.
So we have to be diligent in realizing what specification we're under. And by all means, we have to have that conversation because, again, 3076 limits you in your temperatures and your recycled product, where 341, if you're underneath the 341 spec, it doesn't. Okay. And we've been around 3076 now. It's been going on for almost 2 years.
2 years now.
In 3077.
2 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and we're finding out that there's some issues,
Right.
and we're addressing those issues for
Right.
the 2024 spec.
Correct.
So it's going to take about a year and a half to 2 years of working with these special specifications, the ones we're fixing to go through, to be able to see if we have some issues with them and what we need to do and address them before the new book comes out. So
And that's the goal.
the whole thing about all this
Yep.
is what we're trying to promote is that we need to read the spec. I can't stress this enough. We have to get our books out, and we need to familiarize ourselves with the spec and be prepared. Be prepared, you know, to new mix designs. Be
Right.
prepared to work with temperatures.
Yep.
Be prepared to work with the recycled products.
And like you said, read the spec. So
And
we
read
got
the
a lot
spec.
to cover today.
Absolutely.
We got 4 specs to get started with. Let's jump into 342, which is our porous friction core spec,
PFC.
which is now going to be called Special Specification 3079. So get used to that terminology for a little while.
Yeah.
You know, when Chuck and I, we went through the specifications, we tried to pull out what we thought were kind of like some critical issues. Now, we're not going to cover everything.
No, we can't.
And so we're not taking the liability to cover everything. But we want you to understand that when you get done here, you need to go pull these out. If you're bidding on this stuff, work in 2 weeks, see what you got. See what you got. So first one I saw was tack.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're adding EBL and the trail of the trackless materials to the specification. So that may change the way you put your bid together and you put your project together. So
Absolutely.
that's the first one. In table 2, looks like we've added the shear bond strength for information only.
Yep, for information only, and we need to, again, pay attention to that
Yeah.
because when it's all said and done, the shear bond strength is probably going to be a performance test when it's all said and done.
But we're still trying to figure out what the numbers
Yes.
are, what mix it applies to. So you're going to see this in several of the different mixes.
Right.
So let's go on. What's next? Oh yeah, on the quality control plan.
Yeah.
We've added some additional wording there, and they talk about additional things to report. We got what? Production rate,
Thermo.
physical and thermal segregation.
Right.
We're adding paver speed.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're putting in a compaction aid or a foaming agent. So we want all that stuff in these quality control plans, which helps everybody understand how the contractor is going to build the project.
Yeah, and again,
Makes sense.
the concept of this, and this happens to be in all 4 of these special specifications. And the reason why, and this is so important, that the reason why is that we have to be more diligent to be able to discuss that with our director of constructions, our area engineers, while we're at the pre-pave meeting, you know, to be able to show them that we have a plan of attack. Right. So paver speed and compaction aid and segregations and different things that we really need to address at the pre-pave meeting, it's in the quality control plan. And again, Ryan Barbarack and Travis Patton and Nod, those guys did a great job in identifying the fact that we need to really tighten up our quality control plan.
Right. And you know, a lot of the stuff you're going to hear today, it's across the board in all these specifications. So what they've done is they've done the same thing with 3076 and 37, is try to conform all these specifications. So
Be consistent.
just to be consistent. So we've got one in here, ignition oven correction factors.
Yeah.
Now we've added a 12-month kind of time frame on those factors just to make sure that they kept current, because they make a huge difference on the asphalt content.
And by the way, this is both the contractor and TxDOT.
Yep.
I mean, whoever's running an ignition oven, 12 months, they need to reevaluate that.
Yep. Boil test, when shown on the plans. It was in a lot of specifications for a long time, and now it's basically kind of an optional test. Still in there if the designer wants it, but in generally we're finding it to be an option.
Right.
Table 6, what we've done, this is a new table. So again, most all these specifications, they've got new tables in them. So if you think what you thought was table 2, now may be table 3 or 4.
Yep.
So we've added in the operational tolerances, just like you see in the other specifications. Got one under here on 4.4.2.2.1. We've gone to the gyratory.
Gyratory, super pave. Yep. Utilizing the super pave gyratory.
Yep.
That's by itself. I mean, that's it. No more Texas gyratory for the PFC.
Table 7.
Table 7.
That's a new one.
Again, these tables were missed in the original specification that we're underneath right now.
Right.
And so they're adding them. which needs to happen. Again,
Yeah.
you know, it's something
We're
that
just
needed to
conforming
happen.
stuff.
Right.
And again, we got a maximum production rate of 345. So we want to be careful we don't overheat these materials.
That's correct.
We jumped down to 4.711 where we're talking about the thermal imaging, those kind of specifications. We've got some changes there with and without, you know, whether we're using the system or we're using the camera. We've changed the roadway surface temperatures.
Yeah.
Looks like with the imaging system, the surface temperature has gone from 50 to 60 degrees.
50 to 60.
And without the system, we've gone from 60 to 70 degrees.
Yeah. So if you're
That
using
can
a
be-
camera, 70 degrees. And when we're talking about PFC, the window that we have at night is going to be very limited. I mean, you got to really pay attention to your
Right.
scheduling at this
Yep.
point. That even when using the thermal imaging system, going from 50 to 60 degrees, that's a huge difference in terms of when we're paving at night. So our window of opportunity to pave is going to be narrowed up.
But
so
this is surface
surface temperature.
temperature.
Yes,
Okay,
surface
not mixed
temperature.
temperature, surface
Yep.
temperature. Okay,
Yep.
and then we've added table 8. We've added another table, again confirming to the other ones.
Right.
Minimum mixture temperature of 280 degrees. Okay, there's a compactionate option in there, but what they're doing is they're using an infrared thermometer,
Right.
and they're measuring nearest to the point of entry of the paving operation. So from the way I read that, that's in the windrow, or that's as the mix is discharging from the truck. We take our infrared gun and we're going to shoot it right in there. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and again, we're identifying the fact that we don't want it to be less than 280 because we need
Right.
to get it seeded. We
Right.
need to get that material
Correct.
seeded. And
Correct.
again, that's something that was identified through materials and test. So,
And under compaction, 4.8 compaction, now they've made a change there. Again, trying to make some conforming. They want operations completed not by 160 degrees anymore, but by 180.
180.
So it's again, so we're looking at a narrow window, but again, we're really just trying to seat this material. So we want to get it down, get it seated, and be done with it, and move on.
Right.
And so we're not having to make multiple passes. We just really need to get it seated in there. Further down there, they've added the whole production acceptance, 4.9.2.
that was
that
that was
whole
never
table-
that was never in the original
Yeah.
spec. So
But it is now.
It is.
So,
it is now. So that was a
read up on that. They've added in informational shear bond strength test
Again.
and Hamburg. These are information only. Again, we're seeing if some of these numbers make sense. This is a PFC,
Right.
obviously. We've added in a new table 9, which is production and placement testing frequencies. Obviously, we're going to test.
that was not in the original spec again.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So we needed that.
And when we get down to pay, again, we're trying to cover this pretty quick for you guys today here, but PFC is now composite pay factor, so
That's right.
aggregate and binder together. And remember, TAC is a separate bid item, just as it has been under 3076 and 3077. We're paying for that separately, so shouldn't be a big deal. I think when we talked about this the other day, you made a really good point, is when you're looking at your bid item sheet, remember, these numbers are going to be at the bottom. So if you're looking here and there is no 342, look down at the bottom and see if there's a 3079, because that'll make a difference.
It caught me on a
It's caught me a couple times too.
So
All right, let's move on to SMA.
all right, we
okay?
got 342 out. Now
So
we're at
SMA
346.
now is special specification 3080, okay? Again, sand equivalent. This is for the fine aggregate of a 45, same as the other one. TAC, again conforming there. Approved EBL and trail in here.
Right.
In 2.64, they've reworded compaction aid, and they've done that. They've basically just kind of reworded it, haven't really added anything substantially.
Yep.
But we are finding, not in SMA, but in the others, it does address warm mix, and we've taken warm mix out
Yeah.
of these specialty type mixes
We did.
in the process. So we've changed some stuff in table 4. No RAS in the surface,
No RAS.
3% in the lower mixes. You can have fractionated to wrap up to 5% in the surface and non-surface. Table 5, what have we done? We've added what?
Methylene blue.
Methylene blue,
Shear
shear
bond,
bond, and boil test when shown on the plans. Table 6, we've got a pavement adjustment summary. Again, remember, That's been in there, but just a reminder, this paperwork, the job's not done till the paperwork's done.
That's right.
So we've got to make sure we get all that stuff in there as well.
2 working days, so that's good.
The quality control plan, again, that's the same. We're doing that conforming in there. We're adding in production rate, the physical thermal segregation issue, paver speed, compaction aid, those kinds of things.
Right.
Again, that's just we're just trying to make it the same.
Uniform
and
throughout.
I like having kind of a standard operating
I do too.
procedure. The mixes may change a little bit, but hey, if we do it the same way every day, we're in good shape. What else we got?
We got the overlay test. So we changed the overlay test from cycles to critical fracture energy and crack progression rate.
Yeah, these are 2 new terms that have been developed to better understand what's actually happening as that sample's getting tugged apart. And it's looking a lot, from what we understand from the researchers and what TxDOT is telling us, and this is a new term that we're going to have to get used to, these are telling us a lot more information about that mix. And so we will learn a little bit more as we go along. So we are changing.
And they can be run quicker, right? I mean, we can get the values quicker than we can on the others.
They don't have to necessarily go to the full number of cycles, because these numbers will show up early, and those are the important ones. So we may actually be able to pick up some speed here. Again, the ignition oven correction factor, the 12-month time frame there, that's in there. Trial batch, Hamburg and overlay test are required.
And what's really important there, and this has been in there, but guys, we really need to pay attention, especially when we get to the next one. But there's a 10-day requirement for the overlay test for materials and tests. They're the only ones that can run the materials. Materials and tests are the only one that can run the overlay test.
Right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
And so there's a 10-day window. So if you're running JMF1, then you're running a trial batch, and then you're running JMF2, there could be some potentials, 20 working days, and they're running the overlay test.
So and if you're planning on starting next week,
you better pay attention to it. And again, you can risk running without that information, but it would be on your nickel or your dime.
So as you go into April, as you start bidding these projects, start on putting this stuff on the calendar and say, hey, if we want to start by May 15th or May 19th, we got to back up from there. Make sure when we're ready to go, we're ready to go.
Pay attention. That's all I can tell you.
Table 9, they've adjusted the difference between the job mix formula to target. They've reduced that from 5% to 3% on the 8 and plus.
Mm-hmm. And that keeps in line with the other ones also. Yeah. That was in line with it. So I'm okay with that. We're able to do that.
And again, on the job mix formula, just watch your time for that additional testing as it goes along. And we've had to make notes here because there's a bunch of stuff going on. So
and you got to pay attention that you're more than likely going to have to redesign on all these.
If you've got an existing design,
you're more than likely going to have to redesign and/or trial batch and/or include some of these testing, especially like the sand equivalent on the fine aggregate. That wasn't a requirement. So again, these are going to require mix design changes.
Right. So again, we're looking under testing the trial batch, optional overlay tests, stripping tests, etc. Table 10 and 11. Again, we've got a new table 10. That's a maximum production rate of 345, again conforming to the other specifications.
Right.
Again, SMA is using a PG 76 high end, so we still need to watch the temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an interesting one on table 11.
It's the core height. It's the core height on a type C as in cat.
Yep.
It went from 2 inches, the minimum core height for testing. It went from 2 inches to 1 3/4 inches, 1.75 inches.
Right, so just be aware.
Be
aware. 4.7 in the thermal imaging area of the specification. Roadway temperature was 50, now it's 60. With the camera, it's now 70. Again, it was 60. And we've got air temperatures of 60 degrees and falling to deal with. So now you've got surface temperatures, you've got air temperatures, you've got mixed temperatures. You've got a lot of temperatures to keep up with. So buy an extra set of batteries.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Compaction, complete operations. I think I got a typo there.
Yeah, it's 180.
We went from 160 to 180.
180.
Okay. We've added informational shear bond strength, informational Hamburg and overlay tests in here. Again, not for specification compliance, but just for, we're gathering information, trying to see what these tests tell us, because you know, the overlay and the Hamburg are part of the tests that are being evaluated as far as the balanced mix design initiative,
Absolutely.
which is the next big evolution in mix design. But those are key tests that we're actually looking for, and getting more information on production level mixes now is going to help us in the future.
Methylene blue. we got
Methylene
that.
blue,
So that's another one.
Right.
That's informational purposes.
the segregation profile for paver stops. This is 4.9.5.3.2 if you're following along. They've changed that from 60 seconds to, due to lack of material being delivered to the paving operations and the temperature of the uncompacted mat before initial breakdown is less than the temperature shown in Table 14. Table 14 says 270 degrees.
Right.
So now we've got a different criteria. Instead of a time-based, we're going to a
Temperature-based.
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 Yeah.
Which
So-
again, I think once we start putting this all together,
Yeah.
and you'll see the commonality, and you're going to see temperature just keep jumping out at you. Temperature, temperature, temperature.
Absolutely.
And how we control that out in the field is going to just be imperative. And so you keep bringing up the camera, the gun, which is definitely something that everybody needs to have, but also utilize the other tools that are in our toolbox. The
Absolutely.
PaveCool.
The PaveCool.
And
the software that's
the
out there.
software that's out there.
And we've got TXAPA Lives on those, and if you need any additional help on that,
Just let us
give us a
know.
holler. Exempt production went from the daily minimum from 1,000 tons to 500
500.
tons. Okay. And then the last one we've got here, there might be more, but again, tack coat is paid for by the gallon.
Yep.
And ready to move on. Who's
All right.
next?
Next is 347.
Tom.
Tom mixes.
Thin overlay mixes, now called SS 3081.
Tom mixes, absolutely.
Again, we go through some of our same stuff in here. A sand equivalent on the fine aggregate. We've got 45 in there.
Right.
We added in a little note in here, no fly ash allowed. I don't know how much that was being used.
I don't think there was very much being used.
But that is one thing that TxDOT has been trying to do, is look at some of these specifications where they have maybe a multitude of different materials of choices.
Right.
And if no one's been using it for 3 or 4 years, they're saying,
Pull it
"Hey,
out.
why even keep it in there?"
Right.
Tack, we've added in the EBL and the trail. They've reworded the compaction aid section. Again, this is Tom mix, so in 2.7, they've taken out recycled
They took
materials
out
completely.
all recycled materials out
No
of the
wrap,
Tom mix.
no
No
raz.
wrap, no raz,
Okay.
no nothing.
Table 4, we've restructured, added back in the methylene blue. And the boil test as shown on the plans. Table 5,
They got the boil test
they got
there.
the boil test in there as well.
Table 6 got
Table
the
6
Hamburg.
got the Hamburg in there. In 4.3.5, again, the quality control plan, we've talked about that in the other 2 sections. The same thing, we've added
Same
in
wording.
production rate, the segregations, paver speed, compaction aid, those kinds of things, just kind of flush that out. And I'd really would encourage you guys when you're going through your quality control plan is to spend some time talking about how you're going to build
Absolutely.
these jobs.
I think that's imperative.
Yeah.
I think that's going to solve about 90% of all the issues that are out in the field
Yep.
if you have a good quality control plan.
Yep. Where are we at?
Overlay
table,
test.
Table 7.
Yep.
Again, we've added in those critical fracture energies and the crack progression rate. Those are the new criteria that are going to replace the cycles, the 300 cycles. We're going to something else. So we think that's a good thing. The data looks like it's going to give us a little bit more information about it. So that's good. We've got our good old friend, the ignition oven correction factor, with
That's
a
pretty
12-month
uniform throughout everything.
time frame in there.
Again, watch
on the mix design of submittals and all that, watch your time.
Now watch your time frame, because again, there's only materials and tests at this point can run the overlay test. So, and it's a requirement of 10 days. And the way that you read it, it could be 20 days. Between JMF 1 and your JMF 2,
So
including
communicate.
including your trial batch. So pay attention to the time frame on it.
And that's 10 days once they get it, not
Yeah.
when you start
And
thinking
it's,
about it.
and it's 10 working days. Okay, so it's not 10 days. It's 10 working days. So that's 2 weeks. So
All right, so let's see. We've removed the references from war mix.
yeah, there's
Okay.
no warm mix allowed in the not warm mix, but there is compaction aid.
There is
as-
compaction aid.
Always compaction aid,
Yep.
but they took away the tables for warm mix.
Right. Table 9, again, we've added in the maximum production rate, production temperature,
Production temperature.
345.
Mm-hmm.
4.7, they've added in your favorite.
Yeah.
Your favorite. No what? Chuck?
No longitudinal joint in the wheel path. Now that's pretty
a good thing.
that's pretty uniform throughout all the
That's a good
specifications.
thing.
So it's easy to say, hard to do, guys.
Right.
But that's what it says in the specification. No joint in the wheel path. So we really need to pay attention.
Okay, so Tom F, we've maximum thickness has gone up 1/4 inch from 3/4 to 1 inch, and then we've got our roadway surface temperature. I think there was a bust in here. We've got it up to 60. That was one of the ones that was at 32.
32.
And you're trying to lay that thin at 32 is probably not really a good idea.
Yeah.
And so they've got some additional language in there. This is pretty common to all of them. Produce the mix at target temperature higher than 300 and with a compaction aid to facilitate compaction when the air temperature is 70 and falling.
Yeah, when the air temperature is 70 and falling.
That compaction aid just giving you a little bit more workability in the whole process. And let's see where else we got.
Roadway surface temperature. If you're not using or if you're using a camera.
Yep. So gone from
60 to
60 and 70 with the camera.
Yep.
Minimum placement temperature table's been added in there. That's the same language as in the other ones. 4.7.3.1.2 has added the term moderate segregation in the thermal imaging system.
When it was just severe.
Yeah, so that's something I think we still want to talk about some, but it's in there now.
It's in there now, so pay attention to that.
Pay attention to that. Table 12, we've got minimum uncompacted temperature requiring additional flow measurements, and that's less than 270 degrees. So again, we're not trying to get density out of a TOM mix, but we are trying to compact it to the point where water isn't going through it. And so there's now an additional check in there just for that. And then they've added, again, trying to be the 180 degrees for getting your compaction operations completed, which we probably need to be done by then anyway.
Anyway, absolutely.
Added in your old methylene blue test.
Information.
We deleted the I can never pronounce that.
And that's the Cantabro.
I always have trouble with that.
The Cantabro test. And it's because Materials and Test has enough data on Cantabro.
Yeah.
What they don't have enough data on is methylene blue and shear strength. So be sure to get your test in for each project.
And so they've added in, this is kind of new under 4.9.2.4.2, they've added in the acceptance or less, they had the tolerance, but they added in or less than the minimum binder content during production as per the table 6, which is 6%.
Yeah, so we did have a variance. We had 3/10 of a variance either way.
Yeah.
And now the way that it's written is that
3/10, but you still got to be above.
You got to be above the minimum.
Right.
So if it's 6% on the TOM C, 6.5 on the TOM F, you can't go below 6 or 6.5, or you'll suspend production. So that's pretty important to know, because we do have fluctuations. I mean, we got a minimum of 6%, and we will have fluctuations, but we got to pay attention that that's an opportunity for them to suspend production.
Yep.
So,
and let's see what else we've got. They removed the overlay test requirement. They added in, under 4.9.3.1.2, if the mix doesn't bond, that's under the irregularities.
Irregularities. So they added the note that if the mix doesn't bond,
you may be picking it up.
You could be picking it up.
Or it may be walking off by itself, so we just need to replace it. Pay by the composite ton.
Absolutely. So we're going to pay one price by the composite ton.
So binder and aggregate together and everything else that's associated with or subsidiary to it. And remember, TAC is by the gallon.
By the gallon.
All right. We got that one done. One more. We are rolling here.
We're on the thin bonded friction course, item 348, which is now 3082.
Got it.
And this one had quite a bit of revisions in it, Jim. But
this one's
got quite a bit, but it was because the original specification that we were dealing with did not have all the tables associated with this particular item. And it was quite obvious when you look at it. It's only a couple of pages long in the spec book, right?
That's why we have so many.
We have so many because they added all the operational tolerances. They added all the
tables.
All the tables.
Well, like tables we've already talked about. They've added them in here.
They just weren't there.
Right. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, this is 348 now, 3082. No fly ash. No warm mix.
No warm mix.
No wrapper raz.
No recycle.
Okay. But in Table 5, they've removed the overlay test.
Right.
Table 6 is new. They've added in the reporting schedule table that wasn't in there
That
before.
wasn't in there before.
On the quality control plan, they've added in exactly the same language that was in the other one. Let's see where else we at.
It's renamed thin bonded friction course and not wearing course.
Right. So now we got to get used to a new term, a new name. That'll only take 5 or 10 years. Again, remove the overlay test from Table 8. 4.42, they've removed warm mix.
Right.
Okay. Again.
Now, when we say they remove warm mix, we're talking about they remove warm mix being able to run it at
below 275.
Between 275. Yeah.
Still can use the compaction A.
Absolutely. You can still use compaction A. You just can't lower it to 275.
Right. Great sorting that out. Again, under the job mix formula, they've deleted the hamburger and the overlay test requirements. The ignition oven correction factor, the 12-month duration, that's still in there.
That's throughout all the new specifications.
The trial batch, there's Hamburg requirements for PFC
only.
Fine.
Yep.
Only.
PFC fine only.
Unless it's noted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Job mix form. There's some binder limits in there we need to be looking at out after.
Table 8. There's a new binder limits.
Yep. Table 9, they've added in the operational tolerances just like in the other specifications. What else?
No overlay test.
Yep.
We got the correction factors again.
Yep.
That's uniform throughout the whole process. We got maximum production temperature again. Yep. That temperature keeps jumping out at you guys because it's very important that we're paying attention here.
That's Table 10.
That's 345 is the maximum production temperature.
Okay. In 4.6, no diesel as a release agent.
Yeah. So hopefully we wouldn't have to
should be doing that anyway, right?
Right.
4.7, they added a section in there. It says, don't allow any loose material on the prepared surface before application of the membrane. So we'll make sure it's clean. Yeah. And that's to limit kind of how you're going to build a little bit.
You need to pay really close attention to that one.
Yes,
because that's going to have a determination of what you use to get the material into your machine.
Yep. And again, we've got, with the thermal profiling equipment, they say, there was a new sentence in here, place mixtures when weather conditions and moisture conditions of the roadway are suitable as determined by the engineer, and produce mixture with the target temperatures higher than 300 with a compaction aid to facilitate compaction when the air is 70 degrees and below. And we've seen that in every one of them now.
Absolutely.
But they are looking at weather and moisture conditions with these very thin layers.
So when you're talking about higher than 300, and then you got a maximum of 345, and you got a 25-degree discharge temperature variance, you got to pay close attention of what discharge temperature you're trying to target.
Right.
And stay within the upper limits and the lower limits, because then when the material gets out in the field, then you have a minimum pavement temperature that you have to deal with out in the field. So.
Exactly. In 4.7.1.2. They've changed it to the engineer may restrict the contractor from paving if the air temperature is 30 and falling. And that was from likely to fall below 32 within 12 hours. So that's a good sign.
Yeah,
that's a positive.
We probably shouldn't be doing thin bonded friction course during that time anyway.
Right, exactly. In 4.7.2, we're talking about the application of the membrane, about adding in an overlap of the tack coat in a longitudinal direction. Unless otherwise directed, avoid tacking the vertical faces of adjacent PFC lanes. Obviously, we want the water to flow horizontally. Apply tack to all transverse joints, which makes sense. And then we jump down to 4.7.2.1. This is a new section. It talks about non-uniform application of the membrane. Again, this membrane or tack, we want it just as uniform as anything else that we place. And it basically says stop the operation if it's not uniform due to streaking, ridging, pooling, or flowing off the surface. Verify equipment condition, including plug nozzles, operating procedures, temperatures, material properties. Determine and correct the cause of the non-uniform application. So again, all we're looking for is a uniform application, and we just need to stay after it. Okay. So again, under the same section, there's even a section about doing a test strip for the membrane, because when you're placing mix right on top of it, it's kind of hard to see
Yep.
how uniform that is. And so the engineer may perform independent tests and may require additional testing differences or failing results to be resolved before resuming production. So again, you know, if things go bad, there's a way of kind of getting
Testing
things
it.
sorted back
Yeah,
out.
absolutely.
Okay. We've added in table 12, which is the minimum mix temperature placement.
Minimum
That's
mix temperature.
280 degrees.
280, so you got to be over 300.
Yep.
And you got to be minimum placement temperature, 280.
Yep.
And again, you got a 25-degree discharge temperature variance. It's going to be paying attention, guys.
Right. Under the thermal specifications section in 4.7.3, 1 and 2, 1.2 and 1.3, and for the imaging system, they've added in the moderate segregation issue. They've added in daily reporting.
Daily reporting.
And when you're using the camera, they've added in a sentence about potentially the engineer wants it getting the electronic version of the pictures that you're taking with the camera as you run your segregation or density profiles. 4.8, we've added text 207 and reference to 246. There's a 20-second limit in there. Again, we're trying to make sure the water is we're not measuring density, but we're using flow rate to monitor that. And again, they've changed the ceasing the compaction operations from 160
to 180.
to 180.
Right.
Now, there's a whole bunch that was added.
Absolutely. Here's where we start adding. But
Yeah.
and anybody who's done thin bonded wearing course before they were aware of these tables. I mean,
Right.
we were aware of it. It's just that it was never in the specification. So,
Right.
so you got the production acceptance. We're adding lot sizes and incomplete lot details. That's our production acceptance
Yep.
test. Added the random sampling language.
Mm-hmm.
Added the blind sample language. We added informational Hamburg and overlay testing requirements. Binder sampling, we added in the requirements. And by the way, pay attention to this binder sampling because it's going to refer you back to 545C when you're sampling from the spray paver because we're not want to sample from the nozzles like originally stated.
Right.
So you pay attention to that, where we can sample at, from the transporter, from the distributor.
And we've got some videos
some
on our
videos on
TXAPA or on the YouTube site on that.
But that's
And-
very
and-
important because
And with all the binder sampling, even the next one that talks about membrane sampling,
that's it.
is make sure all the stuff's properly labeled and it's properly put into the system. So there's a requirement in there to actually take samples of that membrane as well as the binder going into the mix. What else we got?
We added production sampling requirements.
Okay.
Now this is production sampling requirements. And then we also added production and placement testing frequency. That's the frequency that we're going to pull the test.
That's table 14.
And
in the
again,
new spec.
these just were not in the other spec.
Yep.
And then they even added in the individual loads of hot mix not being able to use individual loads
Right.
of hot mix. The language for that.
Right.
And then for some, we have the exemption production criteria.
That was added.
That was added to the thin bonded friction course. So, we're talking about that going into the new specification book that we're dealing with right now.
How we're gonna handle that.
How we're going to handle
A
that.
lot of discussion over that.
And then like anything else, we're going to pay by the thin bonded friction course, by the composite. Your membrane will be by the gallon.
Yep.
But the aggregate and the 76 will be paid for combined.
Right.
So, and then we got new language payment for the thin bonded. Okay, so we got that with
Yeah.
the membrane. So we
Is that
covered quite a bit.
Is that all we got?
No, we'll check it off. Check it off the
okay.
deal here, so
There we
that
go.
we can say that we done. So I think overall the things that we really need to pay attention to is temperatures.
Right.
The fact that if we're probably more than likely going to have to redesign, allow enough time for the redesign.
You want to check all your mixes and see if they're gonna comply with these new whatever new requirements are in these new specifications, and get started early because you're talking about time frames.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're already, again, it's in April is when they're going to go through. Please pay attention that 340 is no longer there. That means your detours, your patching, any of that stuff where 340 was used, it's now going to be 3076 exempt, which is going to have a change in your recycled products and your temperatures again. That's
Right.
another thing we got to pay attention to. these are things that are going to cost you money, is essentially what I'm bringing up. And these are the things that are going to catch you, cost you money.
Or time.
Or time.
Yeah.
And again, the temperature requirements for placement, we're narrowing that window down. So be cognizant of schedule. When you're talking about schedule, don't be scheduling PFCs and TOMs and thin bonded wearing course in October on. I mean, it's just, it's dang, they're going to be the seal coat. It's going to be the seal coat season, essentially.
It might be.
So,
well, they've got the same issues we've got.
Absolutely.
So it's so thin, it's going to cool off immediately. We've got to give it a chance of success. We certainly don't want to have we don't want to have maintenance on our brand new pavements.
Right.
And so that really should be a key for everything. So, man, that's a lot.
We got a lot, and you know what? We're still working on them. Again, I can't stress our members and anybody that's out there, CE&I's members, anybody who's watching this, read the new specifications. They're easily you can find them online. We got them on our webpage. Find them, and
we're going to put out some additional guidance on kind of put our notes together in kind of an easy to track around format like we did with 3076 and 3077. And those are on our website as well. So already we've kind of developed a real easy PDF to kind of manipulate around, and even some directions on how to use that and how to download it
and what to look for.
And what to look for. And so it's, you know, we just want everybody not to have an error. You know, and do the right thing and use the right materials and make sure we're good to go. So, man, that's a lot.
Yeah, and I think we covered it in a time frame that a nice time frame anyway.
Anyway, so. I think we took a little bit longer time, but whatever. So, hey, we appreciate you being here today. Thank you so much for paying attention, and glad to see you. And we'll see you next time on TXAPA Live.
Appreciate it.